are queuing for giving blood. People are queuing for helping, for doing the cocktail, Molotov cocktail. You know what that is? If you don't, it's just a mixture of fuel and some stuff in the bottle with like cloth, which is exploding when once lit up. And volunteers are queuing everywhere. So it's yeah. And yeah, I think I hope. Hello?
Sorry,
yeah, I think it got frozen. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so don't worry. So I wonder, like, what was the critical moment when you said, "Oh, I need to leave my country right now in this moment"?
So the story began like I think somewhere in December. When when something is about to happen, people are starting talking, and I started hearing like, okay, someone's getting ready, like at schools we're starting like getting some water for kids to be there, to be stored there, and so on. So we were just like talking, but like we've been in the state of war from like 2014, even though no one calls it to be a war, but it is a war. We've lost like some of our territories in Crimea, so it is a war. And so, and I know like this temperature, when it's okay and when it's not okay. And from December we were talking too much about that. So I was getting ready. I was buying some stuff. I was preparing something and so on. So then somewhere in January, I had my suitcase packed because we had this instruction in our country, like you have to have that emergency suitcase with you. Like in case you have to leave, you have to leave. And so we're all ready for that. And it included not only like clothes or like notebook, it also had like some water filters and so other stuff which is necessary for survival. And then with this case specifically, we were woken up at like 5 o'clock or something like that by 3 explosions, and it was clear enough that it's not a joke. And I think it took us maybe like 20 minutes just to get ready. And then my boyfriend and I and my cat, and we drove to pick up his mother. She lives in the area which is maybe 10 minutes drive from us. We went there, we picked her up with her cats, and as long as I had a plan how to leave the city, it took us maybe like altogether 3 to 4 hours to actually get united and leave. It was immediate. So, but the only thing is that I thought that we'll go outside of the city and we'll stay there overnight. I even booked a hotel there. It's like maybe an hour, 2 hours drive there from Kiev, but obviously it ended up being more because as we were driving, there were more and more things happening. So we left the city around. So we were woken up around 5. And we left the city around 9 a.m. It was all covered in the smoke from the explosions. It was clearly like you can distinguish when it's just fire and when it's an explosion. Being from Crimea and knowing what that is, there was no mistake with that. And I had a plan that we are not going through the bridges because it was the major, like we have several bridges, like 4 or 5 bridges in the city, and obviously the entire left shore wants to leave because it's the closest to Russia. So my plan was different. We went down the map to the town which is called Kaniv. There is the maybe like 2 hours drive. So we went through the villages down there, and it was the success idea because I'm just trying to reconstruct everything because it's been so many things going on.
Yeah, you're doing great. So thank you for my.
Because the only thing we had is that I didn't have enough fuel because like the last week we lived, we always had everything being charged. Like everything was connected to the network all the time. We were in that emergency state, well, at least in my family. And but we didn't, there is always something you didn't do. So in my case, it was I didn't fuel up the car, and I tried to get the fuel somewhere. It was just literally impossible because people started leaving the city like with the first explosions, like 20 minutes after. It was like cars were like just leaving like crazy. And I tried to fuel the car. It was not possible just because it's like 200 cars like hour after the explosion. It's like, it's insane. Like even if you stay there, you may end up having no fuel because the petrol station just runs out of it. Mm-hmm. So we left. It was impossible to use the major roads anymore when we were trying to exit the city. So with the small roads, we left using this like through the villages, the small roads, which was going. It goes just the Dnieper River and it's just down the river, and it took us about 3 hours to get to the bridge in another small town. Sorry if I'm repeating myself, but it's just this is how I feel inside right now. I feel overwhelmed. And on the way
totally,
there, we were
Anastasia, it's totally understandable that you're overwhelmed because
yeah, I know.
are like watching the news every day and reading newspapers and so on, and we are like following this situation in Ukraine with like horror in our eyes, and we cannot even imagine what you're going through. And
exactly,
it's understandable that you are emotional because I'm also emotional. I'm not in this like critical situation that you are. So thank you for sharing your story with us.
So thank you for actually highlighting this, because it is very, very, very crucial. Yes, it's as I've mentioned before, we are the front line for the safety in the entire European Union, because we know what happens when Russian Federation doesn't stop. It can get as far as to Berlin. We don't want that anymore. We don't want that happening again. And this is the reality. That's unfortunate. This is their mindset. This is what they do. So we have to fight for that. Otherwise, it's going to be a horror for everyone. So we were leaving. We were leaving, and it was just from one side, it was insanity in terms of like how many cars tried to fuel themselves. From one side, but from the other side, like everyone was so self-organized. Like there is no like a craziness on the roads yet, probably, but I'm sure that it was just normal, because I've read the news afterwards. Like people were very respectful, and if someone tried to speed up, like a few cars would just drive to stop them. Because like if we collapse, we'll just destroy, like, I mean, it will be harmful for everyone. So everyone was super organized and very polite, and like, okay, but those were like, first hours, because what I've read about the Polish borders, for example, it's an entirely different story. So I'm just telling you about my story. So we left really fast, drove to the bridge. It was probably, as I said to my boyfriend, it was the scariest morning of my life, because even when I when doctors told me that they had cancer like a year ago, that was not as scary as this thing, because that thing was possible to manage, because you know what the diagnosis is, and you just get treatment. And here it's different, because you don't know where it can come from, and you don't know how much time you have, and whether it's going to be like, because the Russians were telling that they have a huge army and it's just like one of the best in the world. This is what we hear, which is obviously not true, because we see that we just our people just stop them on the streets. They just turn them and go them, tell them just leave our country. This is what's going on in some of the areas. So at that time, I didn't know that. I thought that they are a lot stronger than us, which is I'm glad that it's not true. And I was so stressed that I didn't feel my feet. I didn't feel anything. It's just I didn't feel my hands. I was just driving. That was this, like the only thing. I was just praying to cross the bridge, because if I wasn't able to do that, the geography of Ukrainian border with Russia right now is that the entire left shore, if you see in the map, it's Belarus, Russia, and Crimea. So once you get locked on the left shore, it's really hard. You cannot do anything. And once we've crossed the bridge, it was much easier. But this is when the journey started, because we didn't know what's going on. And my boyfriend, he was, first of all, it's like the information vacuum, because you don't know what's true and you don't know where to go. Oh, the idea was that we have to drive not through the major cities, because no one's gonna bomb small villages. If they want to target something big, they will target major cities and the military areas. So we were driving through very small roads, going up and down the map, but central part, because it was the safest, because it's just like from one side, you just don't want to get locked from all the areas. And from the other side, because you've seen they were entering from various points. And the only corridor was just actually villages, which are like sometimes they just have no roads, and like roads are pretty good in Ukraine, but in some areas there is none, like because they didn't have time to build them yet. And this is like when we've crossed the bridge, this is where the journey started, because by that time they were bombing not only Kiev but Zhytomyr, the upper side of Kiev, which is the northeast of Kiev, and Sumy and Bila. So all those areas, the Zhytomyr, it was all exploding, and it's just you're just driving and you have no idea where it's going to explode next. So our tactic was actually going through small roads, and it was 27 hours drive with nonstop. And my parents were calling me saying like, okay, you have to stop for a break or something like that. But what we've done was from Kiev through Kaniv and through other like micro villages to the Romanian border to Siret. So it was, usually it takes about 12 hours. It was 27 this time. And every single time the way it was happening, like my boyfriend, I call him my co-pilot, because I'm driving and he is always telling me, you have to turn here, you have to turn here, like we're a perfect team in this thing. And every single time he's like, okay, we're not going there anymore, there's been a bombing there, and it was like that all the time. And it's just, you cannot stop, because you have because the road can be bombed, and the thing was that all the time as we were driving, it was like constant flow of the cars, like it was nonstop. Because first thing my relatives were warning me about is like, when it's a state of war, it can be unsafe on the road and so on, like you have to stick to someone. It was not the case. It was just constant flow all the time, like all the time. It was I don't know, it's just, I don't know words for that, because first of all, it was in all the areas, it was extremely organized. People were not fighting, people were quiet, concentrated, and just driving. But that was the first time, it was the first 24 hours. So because the temperature was not as high as it was on the second, third, and fourth day, for example, because what was happening, and I hope not anymore, at the Polish border, it's just something no one wants to experience, because what I've seen from the maps before they actually switched them off, I don't know if you know, Google Maps switched off all the maps in Ukraine, so the enemies and invaders cannot see where the cars are crowded, so they cannot bomb there. But what was happening is that we have this Polish border, and the Lviv city, the city of lions, is one of our most famous cities in Ukraine. and one of the oldest. And the traffic jams to the borders were from the city center, or at least from the border of the city to the border with Poland, which is like 40 to 60 kilometers traffic jam. So it's just insane. And the major problem when we were driving was actually to get fuel, obviously, because people were stuck in traffic jams and they were losing fuel just by standing in the city. And I just cannot imagine how much stress they had, because like you just cannot leave. You're stuck and the cars are all around you. We've had that once when we've had a lot of snow in Kiev about like 8 years ago, and people were just leaving their cars, but that's a different story. You know, the snow melts, you just come back and get your car. That's fine. Like, no, not a big deal. But here it's like, it's different, because the major highway can be just bombed, and you just don't know whether it's going to be your car or it's going to be someone else's, and you just won't be able to get anywhere else. So we got to the border, and we didn't know how serious it was at that time. And we thought, okay, we'll just drive like for holidays, and because it might be just like a random thing. And about Zhytomyr that I've mentioned, Zaporizhia, this town in the eastern part of Ukraine that I've mentioned before, where the nuclear power plant, I'm sure you've heard the news that it has been attacked this today, and it's pretty serious actually, because it's one of the largest nuclear power plants in Europe. And if it gets bombed, I mean, it's all over, like for everyone in Europe. So, and I found out about this town being bombed when at the border we talked to a guy. He's a nice guy, like 25, and he was just shaking, like crying, and he said, like, I was driving and I just literally saw like cities being bombed, everything being on fire, a lot of smoke, you know, like when petrol is burning. And he said, like, I'm just driving from my town, which is like, I don't have home anymore. You know, like people were so desperate at that time. And so were us, because we were like, okay, we'll go for like a week or something like that. And at the border, we realized like, okay, it's worse in Ukraine and we cannot leave. Like my boyfriend cannot leave. And you can imagine how much stress that is. Like it is still like when I was, well, I'll get to that thing later on, but 2 days ago, like I've seen him for the last time, and I just don't know whether it's been the last time or we have something to wait for, you know. And it is hard. It is very hard. And so we didn't cross the border at that time because his mother was worried as well. She was like, okay, I'm not going without you. And so we went to the mountains. It's one of the safest areas right now. And we had a place where to stay there. And we went there, and our next thing was we have to make sure that his mother leaves the country. And also it was like, okay, we'll see what's going on. And because, you know, the psychology is that you kind of, even when it's really hard, it's like, okay, it may end up tomorrow, right? So you still try and kind of justify and explain to yourself that it's not that bad. It's like, I think it's like some of the protection mechanism, because it's still, I'm like, okay, but I can go home right now, you know, but that's not true, because it's war there. And
it was really difficult for you to realize that, because you don't really, like, we don't really know, like the whole world doesn't really know when the war is gonna start, right?
Exactly. And the psychology is that if I try to explain to myself, like, well, I do understand what's going on, and I've seen a lot of videos of my friends. Like, if you've seen that big apartment building with where the bombing has happened, and like if you've seen that one, I can show you in Kiev. It's just lacking like a few levels at the level of like 10 to maybe 15, the apartment building. So it was bombed. It was just filmed from the apartment of my friend, you know. So he was just like standing on his balcony, and this is what has happened, you know. It's just like, I get that it's real, but my mind tells me it cannot be, you know, because I know the city, like it is my favorite city, and honestly, like one of my favorite in the world. I know like there are some other places I like, but I love being in Kiev, and I just do not believe that it's happening, even though I've seen a lot of myself right now. And
like at the beginning, you said that you are so well organized, and like
yeah,
we see your president like being with the fellow warriors and so on, and we see like that he is that he has a really big heart, and that you are all so connected between each other, and that you are really taking care well for like the health or whatever. But I wonder, like also before the war started, you were also connected at that time, or this situation kind of, you know, happened that you started to be so connected together?
you mean with other Ukrainians?
Yes, like before the war and now, because I know that like in each crisis, then the people they start together and they start to like making the plan how they will resolve this crisis and so on. And I wonder, you were like so well connected also before, or it just happened like now?
I think that the answer to that, we got organized in 2014 with the Revolution of Dignity. This is when it happened. When first we were very scattered because of the Russian propaganda and Russian work in Ukraine. And the turning point was actually the Revolution of Dignity. And this connection from that time, it was growing on and on and on. And the mindset of Ukrainians has switched so much from that time that if before it was more like this, it was not more, it was very corruption oriented. This is what imposed on us from Russia a lot. Yeah, but from the 2014, it was possible at that time to switch our minds so much that we are working in our country. That's our home. We have to do that. And it was kind of awakening for us at that time. And from that point, what I'm thankful for now, we were so well prepared, not for war, of course, but from 2014, we all know to protect ourselves. We all know how to survive if there is something unexpected happening, you know. So for me personally, it was it was not like, oh, whoa, what should I do? You know, like I was ready for that. And I'm not saying like 100% of people, but a lot of people were ready. And this is what you can see right now, that we're very successful in what we're doing. It's not just like, you know, overnight. Oh, it didn't click anyways. It's not overnight. We've been preparing for that in various ways, and a lot of connections and the motivation. This is what drives us. And obviously the external enemy, this is what unites people inside the country. And yeah.